welcome. You're watching News 9. This is the AI Report, our weekly feature on all that's happening in the world of artificial intelligence. On the show today, we will discuss, are humans really training artificial intelligence to eventually take their own jobs? Also on the show, we will discuss, why is Anthropic's Mythos so scary and why are policymakers so afraid of using that tool? And of course, if you thought there is something that robotics cannot do, we'll tell you what is that something. All that and more on this edition of the AI Report. First up, let's begin with the corporate stories in the world of artificial intelligence. Meta seems to be doubling down on AI. Now, the company will work along with Broadcom to develop multiple generations of custom-built AI processors for its platforms. Here's a report.
Meta is expanding its deal with chip designer Broadcom to build several generations of custom processors to power AI features across its apps. The deal announced Tuesday extends their partnership through 2029. It includes an initial commitment of more than 1 gigawatt of computing capacity, enough to power roughly 750,000 US homes. The agreement also brings a boardroom change. Broadcom CEO Hock Tan will step down from Meta's board and take on an advisory role focused on custom chip strategy, according to a joint statement. Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg said the deal helps build the computing backbone needed to supply, quote, personal superintelligence to billions of people. As AI drives soaring demand for computing, tech giants such as Meta, Google, and Amazon are designing their own silicon to reduce reliance on NVIDIA's expensive processors.
All right, that's a big development coming from Meta and Broadcom. Meanwhile, some other developments in the artificial intelligence space over the week gone by. Take a look at this report.
From billions in earnings for chip makers to Anthropic's cybersecurity concerns, this is AI Weekly. China's chip industry is also showing strong growth momentum as a global sprint to build AI infrastructure creates a demand explosion. Semiconductor industry executives said higher capital spending and capacity expansion has chip makers racing to keep up. China's manufacturing capacity for chips used in cars, smartphones, and electronics is projected to reach 42% of global output by 2028, according to one industry executive. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell held an urgent meeting with major bank CEOs, warning of cybersecurity risks linked to Anthropic's latest AI model.
All right, we will go deeper into that Mythos story in just a bit. But one video surfaced online over the week gone by, just a few days ago, in fact, and it showed that factory workers wearing head-mounted cameras while performing manual tasks in what seemed like a garment factory. That video, of course, went viral, and rows of workers can be seen intently focused on stitching and handling fabric, each with a small camera device mounted on their head. The most widely shared explanation seems to suggest that these cameras are being used to capture first-person footage of skilled laborers, potentially to train artificial intelligence systems and robots, who in turn will end up potentially replacing these very jobs of the workers who are training them. Now, how ethical is this really, and is this trend going to take the entire manufacturing space in every sector? To discuss this, we have with us today Deepak Tuli, industry expert and co-founder of Eka Care. Mr. Tuli, thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us today. Of course, that video went viral and a lot of questions got raised. At the end of the day, it is factory workers who are training artificial intelligence for eventually robots to use that learning from AI, which could potentially take their own jobs. How serious is that concern at the moment?
Thank you for inviting. I would say I'm from a digital industry, and let me give you a reference from there. The first impact of AI was in the digital industry. We have seen, you heard a lot of news people, laying off different companies. But the impact in the industry as on today is positive in the job employment. So if you are laying off 100 people, you're hiring 120. That's the borderline statement. But why is that happening? Because the existing workforce is upskilling and doing something better, which they were doing earlier. For example, I was a data entry operator earlier. doing data entry operation, I may be, doing an MCP server for building the model for my own organization and stuff like those. I believe something similar will happen. I'll be foolish if I say there'll be no impact. There'll definitely impact in whatever we are doing. Everyone in the industry, in the world will get impacted with AI, but people will upskill. And when they upskill, they will do better jobs than what they're doing today. Especially look at the Indian context. There was this AI report which was saying 20%, 24% of the whole process can be fully automated only, saying where we are today. And then there could be about 42% additional, which could be improved. What does that mean? There are one side of looking at saying, how will it work on the labor side? They will all doing the better job what they're doing today, which means maybe managing all these robots or looking at better processor assembly line and maybe training even further better models, right? That's so that the efficiency can then further improve. So all these guys we need to upskill definitely, but will they have job? As soon, whoever will upskill will have the jobs. There, the number says like it could be about 30 million jobs which will get impacted by this, which mean, but if they upskill, the opportunity of this 38 will be, maybe 45, 50 million more jobs getting
Okay.
generated.
Mr. Tuli, I would have agreed with you 100% if we were talking only in the context of the services industry. But here we are talking about factory workers, and this is pretty much the lowest denominator. We've seen the kind of unrest that unfolded last week in Noida as well, with factory workers actually demanding more wages. Overall, the responsibility of upskilling, if it lies with the employees, how many of them can A, afford upskilling, and B, in a manufacturing shop floor kind of a setup, what are those upskilling worthy jobs which a major sort of a resource pool is likely to be subjected to? Because at the end of the day, stitching and packaging are things which it seems robots may be able to do quite easily. So what are the opportunities that may be left for these factory workers?
Yeah, definitely. Bang on. If you look at the scale of Indian industries today, they're very small compared to what happened in Vietnam and what happened in China. So if I'm a owner, if I'm looking from owner point of view, if my output increases, I can upscale my factories. I can make larger and even larger factories. What does that mean? That means there'll be more space, which means there'll be more robo and there'll be more people managing those robots. So that upskill could be, because I'm an expert in packaging, and today I was doing it myself. Tomorrow I will be managing 100 robots and making sure the process is running efficiently and improving every day. That's my upskill as a laborer.
Right.
And because today there were 100 people working, now there are 100,000 robots working in that industry, which will be like country like India today. That could be a massive opportunity.
Absolutely. It will be a
Saying
massive
how
opportunity, but then there must also be enough demand for the plethora of additional goods that get produced in those factories. But operationally speaking, Mr. Tuli, there seems to be sort of, this concern, at least as far as the P&L and the balance sheets of companies goes. And that happens to be from the fact that robots are going to be high capex, whereas employees, especially in a country like India, and you mentioned China and Vietnam, happen to be low OPEX. So this CAPEX versus OPEX battle, how geared up is the Indian shop floor and the larger sort of MSME space, which is the bulk, the backbone really of manufacturing, to really invest in robos? That's the sort of counter theory. Will they be able to afford robos really replacing the low-cost employees who are serving the purpose right now?
The answer would be then in twofold. Short term, I would find it very hard for India, China, Vietnam. But long term, yes, because the cost of these robots are getting down drastically and there'll be enough capital. I don't see there's dearth of capital to be invested. So today, the amount of investment comes to Indian manufacturing is quite low. If I'm a startup manufacturer, I would, it'll be hard for me to raise capital. But with the robots and the opportunity to make more money, the capital will flow in. I've always worked in a digital industry. Whenever there is a change, the capital flows in. I don't see capital would be a big challenge. I think the
Okay.
mindset needs to switch.
All right. So capital will not be the problem. It is actually going to be the mindset. Well, let's leave it at that. Mr. Deepak Tuli, pleasure having you here with us on the AI Report. And thank you so much for putting that story in perspective for all our viewers here. So that seems to be the word really coming in, that it is not going to be capital that is going to be a challenge. If anything, it is going to be a short-term sort of continuity before a long-term mindset change. And that reality may soon unfold where robots end up doing the job of human beings. Well, with that, we will slip into a very short break. But coming up on the other side, Anthropic Mythos. Why is the world so scared of of a tool which is yet to be unleashed for public use. We'll bring you a perspective on that. On the other side, you're watching the AI Report. Welcome back. You're watching the AI Report right here on News 9. Time now to shift focus to Mythos. But before that, what's really brewing between Pentagon and Anthropic? Well, the Pentagon and Anthropic have been at loggerheads for over 6 weeks now over what began with safety guardrails and military autonomy. While that is still on, Anthropic has received what amounts to a major endorsement from the Trump administration. Now, while speaking at a Wall Street Journal event in Washington, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent praised Anthropic's new Mythos model. Now, Bessent called Mythos as a revolutionary step that will help America maintain its lead over China in the artificial intelligence race. Now, what exactly is Mythos and what makes Mythos a path-breaking platform? Well, simply put, it is an advanced AI model designed to scan software systems, identify and create exploits for high-sensitivity, zero-day vulnerabilities across operating systems and web browsers at an unprecedented scale. Now, because of its immense potential for misuse by hackers, it is so far restricted from public release with access limited to a vetted consortium. Now, as Anthropic puts it, they have created an AI model so powerful that out of a sense of overwhelming responsibility, it was not going to release it to the public. Now, the implications could be stark, to say the least. The software has the potential to find and exploit those weaknesses faster than any human team can patch them. Now, everything that depends on software, and this includes hospitals, banks, power grids, and the devices that you carry in your pocket, all of them virtually exposed. Now, the Reform UK MP Danny Kruger wrote the letter to the government urging to engage with AI firm Anthropic, whose new frontier model, Claude Mythos, could present catastrophic cybersecurity risks to the United Kingdom. Now, the reactions on X range from celebratory to skepticism. Some feel Anthropic's Dario Omadai has mastered the art of hype in recent times. While it's unclear whether Anthropic has built the machine god, it has raised eyebrows across the world. Now, even the Indian government is looking to test it for its defense capabilities. Now, to discuss whether Mythos is a potential asset or a threat in the making, we have with us today Kanishk Gaur, cybersecurity and AI experts, along with Febin John James, founder of AIBodh. To you first, Kanishk. Now, this Mythos tool has really been making headlines. Just explain to our viewers what is so scary about Mythos detecting vulnerabilities that humans may never be able to.
Mythos is able to detect zero-day vulnerabilities. These are vulnerabilities which are unknown in softwares and which can create havoc. So today, if there is a zero-day vulnerability in a Microsoft or a Adobe system which is used in power plants, then power plants would be shut down because of the zero-day vulnerability. So today, Mythos has lowered the barrier significantly when it comes to cyber attacks. You don't need elite hackers. You need regular capable hackers who could use these zero-day vulnerabilities and exploit them.
Okay.
So the overreach of doing cyber attacks has become significantly easier. Not everyone becomes a hacker overnight, but someone who understands zero-day vulnerabilities can then use exploits to access systems and make them persistent. And this could be used as a cyber weapon. Now, the key thing here is that this has dual use. The zero-day vulnerabilities could offensively be used in operations where there is war, which could be used by Department of War. That's why Peter Hegseth was after it. It could also create a stockpile of the zero-day vulnerabilities by not letting the other part of the world know, and then use it for creating backdoors. This we saw the US using in with Stuxnet, where they try to basically stop the Iran's uranium enrichment and push it back by a number of years. Now, the regulatory pressure is government regulators would never allow the open release of such capability because it will be dangerous. It could be used against a nation state. But at the same time, they would want to acquire these capabilities. So
Right.
this is more about national security control and tech and strategic positioning. That's what Anthropic is leveraging. Now, this could enable more government partnerships, despite denying the access to the Pentagon and to the White House. White House is still interested in using the capability of Anthropic in offensive security and use their exploits for basically going after adversaries. So this is more of cyber wargaming where Anthropic would come to great use, and critical infrastructure, particularly in defense, would be targeted when there is a situation like war going on right now. So it basically enables cyber deterrence capabilities for countries like the US.
All right. Thank you so much for putting all of that in perspective. But, one question that still continues to loom is that if Anthropic Mythos could be developed, then what is stopping from another equally potent tool being developed, which could pretty much exploit the same zero-day vulnerabilities that you've been speaking about, and that going in the wrong hands? So at the end of the day, are we talking about a scenario that countries and institutions that have a B2B sort of or a B2G sort of use case of Mythos are going to be better protected as against those that do not acquire these sort of safeguarding tools?
It is not just about B2B or B2G, it can also be B2C. It could also be C2C. Because today, if this tool lands in the hands of hackers, which can operate from a third world country, they could exploit another country and create a situation of war right now. So it's basically allowing supply chain vulnerabilities to be exploited on a big time basis, and it will help countries create their strategic autonomy. So it is not about can't there be another system like this be created? The point is who can create it first and have more strategic autonomy. So it
Right.
is basically using AI for cyber warfare today, and the speed to acquire it, instead of months or years, it is now reduced to hours, which is one of the biggest difference. And the second part is entire scale at which it could be automated and the asymmetry through which it can gain disproportionate power. That's really the key part of it. So it could be used to shut down power plants. It could be used to shut down nuclear reactors. So from reactive security, we are moving to predictive security,
Right.
which makes continuous attack surface vulnerable to all kinds of exploits and threats. So systems you already know are have known vulnerabilities. The unknown vulnerability is really the key, and there is obviously time which is taken by the software company, the OEM, which is up to 90 days. Now, within this 90-day period, you could potentially exploit it and use it for offensive manner, and it could be used for waging war against a country, against the economy. So it creates that strategic autonomy, whosoever gets it first.
All right. Of course, that strategic autonomy is what I think the entire world is eyeing right now. Let's also bring in Febin John James, founder AIBodh, into this conversation. Mr. James, we are talking about the zero-day vulnerabilities and how Claude Mythos could potentially help countries garner the sort of ability and the ammunition to protect itself against zero-day vulnerabilities and potentially also exploit the loopholes in other countries that potentially do not have those safeguards. But talking specifically about the Indian context, I mean, one doesn't really know and is always skeptical of what is under the hood when it comes to AI development in China. Now, while Anthropic Mythos is there out in the public, people know about the possibilities that exist both for defense and offensive capabilities. For a country like India, do we have a looming threat from a neighbor like China potentially where we don't even know whether a Mythos equivalent has already been developed and tested?
Yeah, I think even if China don't have a capability like that, they will have they will have a backdoor access, or somehow they can attain access to Mythos, or potentially in the future any technique, any such technology for that matter. So we have to consider that that is possible, and we have to be proactive in acquiring, a technology like Mythos faster, because the threat is very real. And given that Anthropic has done it, and as we have seen in the past, when someone like OpenAI did it first and they broke the entire AI space, and Anthropic followed. Similarly, now Anthropic is doing it, and definitely there's someone in China who will be following like DeepSeek, right? So we have to consider that as a threat, and India has to be proactive in defending itself.
All right. And final word to you, the government of India is obviously saying that it wants to sort of test this software and understand the kind of risks and the kind of opportunities that exist. But how critical is it for India, if not to build, but to quickly go ahead and acquire these safeguards to protect its own autonomy and national interest?
See, it's very critical for India to kind of acquire it right now, given our security threats or security issues, vulnerabilities which has occurred in the past last 5 years as such, right? And we all know about the data leaks which has just happened and has come out many times. So in that in that data evidence which we have to go ahead and acquire it right away and start testing it. And I think Anthropic is more than willing to kind of collaborate with governments to do that. So I think the faster the better.
All right, faster the better. Well, Febin John James, founder AIBodh, and Kanishk Gaur, cybersecurity and AI expert, thank you so much for joining us on the AI Report today. And with that, we will slip into another short break. But coming up on the other side, if you thought that robots can do everything, think again, because there are some very, very fundamental, basic jobs that robots find hard to deliver on. We'll tell you that on the other side of the break. You're watching the AI Report right here on News 9. Now, the pace at which advancements in artificial intelligence and robotics are taking place worldwide is nothing short of breathtaking, some would call it. While we have to and have heard, in fact, stories of robots going rogue in a mall and them calling their robo co-workers to skip duty in the past year, new videos now emerge showing robots from playing basketball to chasing down wild boars, and these can be seen now on a regular basis. We take a look at some of these in this segment along with my colleague who joins me in the studio. I have with me Amit Kumar Ranjan, the executive editor of News 9, right here in the studio, and look at some of those visuals, and let's pull up those videos as we speak. Amit, what can robotics do to what can't robotics do? Let's first begin with what can robots do. Of course, we've seen robots in factory floors packaging goods and really, shipping them, exporting them, and even manufacturing assistance. We've also seen robots now in latest videos emerging of sprinting on the streets and really becoming a sight to behold for users. And at the same time, we are also now looking at robots chasing wild boars down streets, pretty much replacing the most lowest common denominator, which are shepherds. So yes, what have been some of the key wow moments that you've come across when it comes to the world of robotics?
Not just that, they have even become delivery boys. They have been tested for being delivery boys. So goodbye to the Swiggy gig workers,
right,
and the Zomato gig workers in the days to come. But yeah, they've still to master mathematics. But apart from that, it seems every field anything that humans can do, even from earlier on, robots playing chess were not manually playing it.
Right.
Now they are doing that also. Next thing is you will have an IPL team that is only a robo IPL team. Look forward to that, and they can play every stroke to perfection, measured to perfection.
I'm not sure if I would agree with you on that front, because you're talking about cricket, which is a far more complex game, some would argue, because you really don't know the pace of the ball, where the fielders are positioned. I'm sure sensors will be able to in time detect that. But look at this latest video which is running on the screen right now of a robo trying to play basketball, an easy enough sort of sport, one would argue, where he or she, this robo doesn't have an opponent, and just trying to take a simple two-pointer and see how beautifully he misses it. So, yeah, I mean, basketball...
He got the two-pointer, he missed the three-pointer.
Oh, that's a three-pointer? Yeah, okay, from that angle, it looked like a two-pointer.
Because two-pointer was straight, so probably that's why the perspective was a little easier for him.
Compare that to human beings. At the end of the day, I think human beings, and we're talking about athletes of decent degree who are standing without opponents, will be able to shoot the three-pointer quite seamlessly. Robots are unable to take that three-pointer, and look at the robot really trying to express his emotion, really feeling sad about missing it. So, at some point, are we also looking at sports? Of course, the entertainment part of sports may be taken over by robots, but do you think sports will end up becoming the Achilles heel? Because at the end of the day, you will still have human beings who may be able to sort of use tricks which robots may not have mastered just because of the lack of enough training.
I'll take a page out of something we just spoke about in this episode.
Mathematics.
Not mathematics. Before that, They are learning manufacturing in the textile industry.
Right.
Now imagine next soccer league that happens, every soccer player from Messi to Ronaldo has a sensor on his head and a camera on his head. The robo is learning every trick that these people know.
Right.
Every cricket player, they know the helicopter shot of Dhoni, they know the pull shot of Rohit Sharma, they know the straight drive of Sachin Tendulkar. They are taught everything that the best in the world can do. How do you compete with that then?
But there is one point where I will disagree. While I understand that, mounted cameras will train the machines to really understand every trick used physically by a player, how does the robo figure out the tricks being used mentally? A deception shot. You want to hit somewhere, you're training the opponent that you're going to hit in one direction, you end up hitting in another. How do you expect robots to learn that?
That is something we'll have to wait and see how far technology can take them to start making decisions of that kind out of the box. They can make decisions that have already been made by man and they've learned from those. But making decisions out of the box, let's see how far technology takes them and how far technology is allowed to take them.
Absolutely. So that is where perhaps creative thinking comes in. But some argue that even creative thinking is something that machines, not necessarily robots, but machines using algorithms, your ChatGPTs and Claudes and nano bananas of the world are already replacing humans, coming out with designs and coming out with creative output, which is far superior to human imagination, some would argue, in a fraction of the time.
Yeah, but right now they are giving options of the creative output. So still there is a creative director who is choosing from all the options these people are giving you.
Right.
Probably that choosing from the options of how many shots you have in your bag, which one to play at what time, that's the next level, and let's see if they can do it. I would love to see a match between humans and smartly trained robots.
Absolutely. I think that is going to be definitely something to behold, but also robots going rogue. I mean, look at these visuals which are playing on the screen right now. A robo potentially, in an office setting, in a factory setting, expected to do a routine task, ends up going rogue. At the end of the day, the scenario that you're talking about where you may have a match between humans and robots, if the robots were to sort of take offense to losing, to not being able to compete successfully against a human being, them going rogue in the middle of a match, God save the humans, wouldn't it be?
God save the humans, because when a human gets hurt, he falls down and he's attended to. Robots don't get hurt.
Yeah. And
they're made of metal.
At best, immediately replace an arm, replace a part, change the battery, and the robo is out playing again.
Yeah, so it doesn't get tired.
It doesn't get tired. Well, of course, something very interesting that we discussed outside of robotics was the ability of robots to, algorithms, perhaps not robots, to also solve for math. We will take up that story next week, but a teaser for our viewers. What is it in math that AI cannot do just as yet? And how far is it learning those tricks to be able to solve them?
As far as my research goes right now, and it has been talked about this very week also around the world, they can do geometry well. But when it comes to advanced algebra, it seems the learning is still in development. It's a process that's still taking place. So mathematics is still an Achilles heel that you would say, that's still in the hands of humans maybe.
All right, so what is the future of robotics and artificial intelligence? Well, let that be X for now. We will get you an answer to that X, potentially some version of an answer on the next episode of the AI Report. Thank you so much for tuning in and see you next time.